Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
Radio.
Hey, Dabo Sweeney, congrats. I got you in, baby.
This is entertainment. People pay to watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in. Whoa!
People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting washed. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time, a Wednesday in central New York. And we've got a fun show planned for you this afternoon, an abbreviated show. We went like 15 minutes long yesterday. Now we got to go 15 minutes short today, and that's because the Syracuse Crunch are coming up. Crunch pregame at 5:45, Crunch tonight at 6 p.m., and you can hear it right on this very station. We will have Sophie Burrows, the ACC Player of the Week for the Orange women's basketball team. She'll be joining us in about 15 minutes or so, so we'll chat with Sophie about her terrific game on the breast cancer awareness pink out game on Sunday. She went for a career-high 16 rebounds in the game. Unbelievable rebounding game from Sophie. Also dropped 19 points in that game on Sunday. The junior, who has been with Coach Jackie and Syracuse for 3 years, will chat with Sophie Burrows right around 5:15. She will be joining us live on the program in our second segment, which will be our final segment today. So knowing that, the phone lines are open right now, and if you want to call in right now, we will get you on the air, and this is your best chance to get on the air this afternoon. We'll have a full show tomorrow and Friday as well. 315-437-7644 if you want to call in to Drive Time this afternoon. That's 4 ESPN 44. Let's dive right into it with our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive. What I want to discuss is something that I wanted to discuss yesterday and didn't get to. And know that it's not my Top 5 Tuesday. That will be pushed to Thursday now. But I will give away who I think the top coaching candidate is today for replacing Adrian Autry if/when it comes to that here as we roll along with our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive. What I want to discuss is what I had as takeaways going through every single power conference job that has opened and had to hire a new head coach in the last 2 years. And I've kind of grouped all of those power conference jobs in the last 2 years in the coaching carousel of college basketball into a category of were they a success to this point? And then, of course, in the case of a lot of jobs that are in their first year or in the middle of their second year, we're kind of still up in the air. And what have been failures? And what do we take away from that as it pertains to Syracuse, knowing that they will likely be opening this offseason and be one of several power conference jobs, and they'll be looking at all kinds of coaches and hoping to hire the right head coach this offseason and what we know is a very important hire. So the success stories in terms of coaches that have been hired at the power conference level in the last 2 years. Vandy made a terrific hire with Mark Byington after Jerry Stackhouse, and Vandy is doing well right now in seemingly every sport. Louisville hired Pat Kelsey after Kenny Payne and the disaster that was, and a lot of you have brought up that example as a quick turnaround and a reason why Syracuse should fire Adrian Autry and move on to a different head coach. Michigan hired Dusty May. This came up on PTI yesterday when Tony Kornheiser was saying Syracuse just needs a complete reset. They almost feel like Michigan at the end of the Juwan Howard era. They hired Dusty May. They are number one in the country right now. Really nice hire going outside of their family. Villanova is an interesting comparison for Syracuse because I do think Kyle Neptune and Coach Autry have some similarities in terms of taking over for a legend. 3 seasons, did not go well. They gave him a fair shake, just never really improved enough, never showed enough growth, and that's probably where things are trending with Coach Autry And that's how it went for Kyle Neptune, who was a head coach previously at a different school before he was the head coach of Villanova. So that's one difference when you're comparing Kyle Neptune to Adrian Autry. But Nova went out and hired Kevin Willard, and that has been a big success story for them. That's a really important one to key in on here. Kevin Willard, Maryland to Villanova, because Maryland has been a big flop in terms of who they hired and where their program sits this year compared to last year. Maryland boat raced Syracuse last year in Brooklyn, and they were in the NCAA tournament under Kevin Willard. They hired Buzz Williams after Willard left for Villanova. Buzz Williams has not had a good first season at Maryland. They're right now in the 130s on KenPom. They were preseason 34th on the KenPom rankings. So it's been a big flop there through the first season with Buzz Williams at Maryland. Remember, Kevin Willard on the way out from Maryland to Villanova, it was the worst kept secret in the NCAA tournament press conferences when he was the Maryland head coach last year that he was leaving to go to Villanova, and he was making it a point to say, we have to improve our NIL at Maryland for me to come back. We have to get better. We're at the bottom of the barrel in terms of NIL and what we're bringing in right now for our roster. So he went to Villanova. So logically, we can assume Villanova's in a pretty good spot NIL-wise if he was making that the first priority as to why he didn't return to Maryland, the NIL situation there. Virginia went from Tony Bennett basically to Ryan Odom, and that's been a success, and they obviously have a good amount of NIL as well. NC State's been a success. Will Wade got a nice win last night over their rival UNC, down their top two players. The Orange will see UNC on Saturday. They went from Kevin Keats to Will Wade, and they've hit the ground running. Now there's some speculation reading The Athletic today, and I don't think there's a ton of speculation, but The Athletic said there is at least some smoke of would Will Wade jump back to LSU if that opens up. That was his former job, remember? And there's been some smoke apparently out there about that. Miami went from Jim Larinaga, remember he retired midseason last year, to Jay Lucas, been a big success story. Miami has a lot of NIL. Fran McCaffrey out at Iowa, Ben McCollum in at Iowa, that's been a success story as well. Those are your big successes. And all of those schools that I just went through, I would say are in a good position in terms of resources for their roster, from what we know. So when we talk about Syracuse and we have the conversation of who could the Orange hire, who should they hire, should they go inside the family, should they go outside the family, I want to make this very clear. Josh Schertz is the top name on my list right now. And I say that, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And I know that there's a perception that why is Tim only talking about the family candidates and he's not talking about Josh Schertz? I've been talking about Josh Schertz, and obviously he is very high on the list. He's also very high on the list for pretty much everyone right now. He is the top name on pretty much every athletic director that is going to hire a new coach this offseason. On their list, it is Josh Schertz at the top. What we know of college basketball right now in this day and age is that your budget and your resources that you have to spend on your roster is going to influence a coach's decision to go to a school a lot. If you hear a coach speak right now across the country, they all are talking about how much resources matter. We know that Josh Schertz left to go to St. Louis, and a big part of why he made the decision to jump from Indiana State, and he picked St. Louis in particular, was because they had a good NIL budget. And they were going to pay him pretty well. And it wouldn't be shocking if we found out that Josh Schertz is getting paid more than Adrian Autry right now. That would not shock me. So he is going to be focused on resources. Any good coach in this cycle is going to be focused on what can you give me from a resources perspective. For all of you that are tired of me talking about NIL, I'm not talking about NIL because I think it's an excuse. I'm talking about NIL because Syracuse, part of the decline for them was they weren't in a good spot NIL-wise for the first 2 years of Coach Autry's time. They got to a fairly good spot, a spot that, yes, they should have been way more successful this year with the roster they have. And that's why Coach Autry is likely going to get fired, because they got to a spot, NIL-wise, that they could have been able to make the NCAA tournament for sure, and maybe even win a game in the NCAA tournament. And they're not going to do that. They're not going to play meaningful games in March. But we all need to understand that if you really do want Josh Schertz as the next head coach at Syracuse, Josh Schertz is weighing his options right now, and he's trying not to be Niko Medvedev, basically. Everyone wanted Niko Medvedev last year. He was the hottest name. He went to his alma mater, Minnesota. I don't know what their budget is, but they've kind of had just an okay first year under him. He was a terrific offensive coach at Colorado State. The offensive numbers this year at Minnesota aren't great. You take that step up. Josh Schertz, an unbelievable offensive mind. Anyone in the industry would tell you that. Anyone would say right now that Josh Schertz is at the top of the list. So how do you go and get the guy that is number one? Well, you got to have strong NIL. He's not going to take a job as the hottest name in the cycle to a school that has adequate NIL or just okay NIL. I don't know where Syracuse falls exactly. I don't know where Syracuse could get to, but I do know that Josh Schertz is going to weigh that in his decision a ton. So that's why we're talking about it, maybe more than you want us to be talking about it. That's the number one thing on coaches' minds. That's the number one thing on everyone's mind that works in college sports right now. So that's why we have to have that conversation. We're going to bring on Sophie Burrows here and chat with her, and we'll talk about the great women's basketball team that the Orange have right now and get into all of that. If you'd like to call in after we chat with Sophie Burrows, we should have some time before we wrap up the show. If you have thoughts on any of what I just discussed in the Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive, you can call in after we visit with Sophie Burrows. But she is up next here on Drive Time. You're listening to it on ESPN Radio and watching it on QSportsTalk.com.
Did you miss Drive?
Yes, looking right at the camera, staring into your soul, Ryan. I know Ryan's excited for the Sophie interview. Ryan, if you got a question specifically for Sophie, fire away. I know you follow all the team very closely. Is YouTube working? Let's see. F YouTube. YouTube's working. We're back. Don't let us get hot. Love how the Twitch chat. Anytime I bring up YouTube, F YouTube. Really, Tronic. Don't remember those days, of course. My point in bringing up Niko Medvedev is you can be the hot name, and if you don't make the right choice or you don't go to the spot that has the best resources, you'll quickly not become the hot name or you'll quickly fall off. Oh, right. Australian football, I think, right? Ryan? Kevin McHale went to Minnesota? I didn't know that. Fun fact, Kevin McHale went on a date with my mother. Allegedly. Before my time, of course. But that's the rumor on the street from my mother. Well, I think they'd have to up their game and resources, bowling ball. Kevin McHale is your dad, yeah. I'm definitely not as tall as Kevin McHale. I don't know, Ryan. I'm guessing they did know each other, but that's a good question. Yeah, I miss Steve. The website's been down. Sorry, guys. I don't know. Blame Paulie. He messed up. When in doubt, blame Paulie. Wow, that's impressive, Supercat. You think we can get anyone, but not shirts? That doesn't really... Oh, anyone else. I see. Well, we know Hodgson seems to be interested. Right, Philly. I agree. He's probably definitely way more in the realistic camp. Oh, Paulie messed up the log. Coming back. Blame Paulie.
600. They're on the air because they care.
Well, they blew up the chicken man in Philly last night. Now they blew up.
Welcome back into Drive Time on a Wednesday afternoon in Central New York. Tim Leonard with you. You can always watch the show on QSportsTalk.com. And if you are watching right now on our Twitch stream on QSportsTalk.com or our YouTube stream on QSportsTalk, our YouTube page, then you will see our next guest live and in person. That is Sophie Burrows, the ACC Player of the Week and the star forward for the Orange women's basketball team. Sophie, so great to have you on. And let's start right there. How did it feel to find out that you were named the ACC Player of the Week this week?
I mean, yeah, it was pretty cool. I wasn't expecting it at all. So it's always nice to get that kind of recognition. But obviously, it's all about the wins from here on out. So that's what we're focusing on. And yeah.
Yeah, and Coach Jack does a great job of recognizing any of those kind of individual awards, Player of the Week awards. We've seen Uche get a ton of Rookie of the Week awards this week. That's a team award, right? And I know that you are enjoying, I'm sure, being around this team because any of the players I've spoken to rave about the chemistry and the vibe of this year's group. How much fun has it been just to be with this team each and every day and having this successful of a season to this point?
It's been amazing. This is definitely like my favorite team I've ever played on. I think the chemistry we have is supernatural and it really clicked from the beginning. And I think that chemistry is really shown on the court in our success. And, you know, I'm really proud to be part of this team.
Was there a moment, Sophie, where you realized that early on? And everyone has said that from the preseason or some of the first meetings with the team, you could tell that it was the right chemistry. Was there a particular moment or a time you look back on where you kind of knew, like, okay, this team's going to be a whole lot better than we were last season?
I mean, I could definitely see it in the summer. You know, I think sometimes teams can be a little bit cliquey, especially at the start, but I think everyone kind of just got in around each other. We were all with each other a lot throughout the summer. And then in those first few games, you know, we really dominated those first few games. And I think that chemistry was definitely a part of that. But yeah, I think it's just been evident from the moment we all kind of got together in the summer.
And I'd imagine for you, Sophie Burrows is with us here, the ACC Player of the Week, and you're now in your junior season, Sophie, and you were the lone returning starter And you've known Coach Jack's system for 3 years at this point, so you're a veteran on this team. I'd imagine for you, it's a transition this year into more of a leadership role, knowing that you've been around Coach Jack for a while and you know what works for Coach Jack. How has that been for you, transitioning maybe into being a more vocal leader this season? And is that something that came easily to you, or did you have to kind of work on that part of your game?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been working on it for the last few seasons, I'd say, but this season especially, you know, with our upperclassmen coming from really successful programs, and some of the freshmen coming in from like really successful high schools. You know, we all have that talent, but obviously not everyone knew kind of Coach Jack's program and whatnot. So definitely as someone who's been with her the longest, I really wanted to help them with that transition. And, you know, it takes a conceited effort, I would say, to, you know, always be talking and kind of be that leader. But, you know, this team makes it super easy. Everyone's been like really amazing in terms of like listening and being a sponge. So, you know, my teammates definitely make that kind of leadership role easy for me.
And it sounds like before the Clemson game, one example you did of kind of showcasing some leadership, we heard Coach Jack talk after the game about how you put a message on the board of one of Coach Jack's favorite songs. What went into that, and what can you tell us about basically before the Clemson game, what your mindset was and what the message was to the team?
Yeah, it's something we do every week. Every game, we always put kind of a little saying on the board, something that we've been focusing on for the week or whatever it is. But yeah, this game specifically, we knew it was going to be a tough one. Clemson's an amazing team. They have a lot of talent, but we really just wanted to come in and kind of, I mean, the saying I put on the board was waging war. So, you know, we really wanted to just come in and throw the first punch, and we knew we were playing for something bigger than ourselves, especially being the pink game. So, yeah, we just wanted to come out and really show that from the beginning.
Yeah, you talk about playing for something bigger than yourself, and it is amazing when you think about kind of everything happens for a reason and fate and all of those things, that with Tiana Mungakahi on all of our minds during that game, and Tiana, an Australian who wore number 4 for Syracuse, and then there you are, an Australian who wears number 4, wearing her number, and you have one of the best games of your career on that day. Were you extra motivated going into the game, kind of knowing that? Or what's your reaction when you hear people talk about how Tiana wore that number and then there you are having that unbelievable game wearing her number?
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately never got the chance to meet Tiana, but it's so obvious the kind of impact she had on the Syracuse community, and knowing that coming from Australia as well and wearing her number, you know, I definitely wanted to go out there and play a little bit harder and leave it all out in the court there, because I know that's something that she definitely would have done. So, you know, it means a lot, not just for Tiana, but for all the cancer survivors and people fighting right now. So definitely as a team, we just wanted to go out there and kind of leave it all out on the court for them, for sure.
Is that something that Coach Jack communicated to you guys before the game, the idea of playing for cancer survivors, or playing with a little extra edge in this game, knowing that there were going to be some cancer survivors at the game, and breast cancer awareness was a part of the game on Sunday?
Yeah, we all kind of came in knowing that, and Coach Jack definitely emphasized that. But I think Coach Jack does a really good job of emphasizing that, like, no matter the day, you know, we are just playing a game of basketball at the end of the day. You know, there's people going through a lot more than we're going through. So, you know, just recognizing that and knowing that we want to come out and leave it all out in the court, because there's some people that may not be able to do that. So, yeah, I think Coach Jack does a really good job of emphasizing that throughout the season, regardless of the day.
Sophie Burrows is with us. She had a career-high 16 rebounds in the win over Clemson on Sunday. Was there a moment in the game, Sophie, where you realized this is a little abnormal, how many rebounds I'm pulling down in this game? You had 11 rebounds at halftime, and Clemson's entire team had 11 rebounds at halftime. So was there a moment in the first half or early on in the game where you realized this is going to be a big rebound game for me, or do you not even kind of process that as the game's happening?
Yeah, no, definitely, because I don't normally get so many rebounds, obviously. So definitely coming into halftime, a few people pointed it out to me, and they were like, "You got to keep going. Like, we want to like see 20 or whatever." So my teammates definitely kind of pointed that out to me, and definitely made a conceded effort in that second half to keep going after the rebounds because that was what was working for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Clemson was a really good defensive rebounding team. You guys have been a great offensive rebounding team throughout the year, and that was a big part of the game. You had 8 offensive rebounds, 8 defensive rebounds for a career-high 16 total rebounds in the game. And Uche Azoje has been the one that has been the leader in the rebounding category throughout much of the season. I want to ask you about her because you've been around a lot of great players, and Coach Jack raved about her from the moment she stepped on campus about how talented and how special she could be. And now we're seeing the growth each and every game with her. How much fun has it been to play with her and see that she's one of the best bigs in the ACC already as just a freshman?
It's been amazing. Not only is she a super talented player, she's just an amazing person. She's so humble and she's so willing to take everything in. And I think that's really translating to her game because obviously it is a transition coming from Japan and playing basketball there to playing basketball in college. There's definitely a difference in the game, which I think I've experienced as well coming from Australia. So just her willingness to learn has really shown on the court throughout the year, I think. And she's just so talented and I love playing with her. I love being able to kind of play that high-low game with her and knowing that if I miss a shot, she's going to get my rebound. So, yeah, she's an amazing person, amazing teammate, and an amazing player.
What do you think specifically were the biggest differences coming from Australia to the American game? Like the things that you had to adjust to that maybe now you feel you're more used to playing in the American game for a little bit?
I definitely say like the speed of the game. I think in Australia, it's a lot more of a thinking game, a little bit slower, a bit more like people running plays, that kind of thing. But I think coming to America, there was definitely a transition in the speed and the strength of the players I'm playing against. But I think, 3 years now, I think I've made that transition pretty well by now.
Yeah, certainly. And that was one of the best all-around games you've had in your Syracuse career. And that's why you were named ACC Player of the Week. One of the reasons, at least, for the big week you had with the 19 points and 16 rebounds against Clemson. And you clinched that game at the end with passing it into Shai Hawkins, and then she hits the 2 big free throws at the end. And I was so impressed by Shai's poise in that moment. She was kind of smiling and joking as she's attempting those free throws. Just how proud of Shai were you when you saw her go to the line there? And obviously, those are 2 incredibly clutch free throws that you made to end the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I even threw the ball, when I looked at Shai, and I was like, "You're going to have to come get it," because I didn't think the original play we were running was going to really work. So I looked at Shai, and I was like, "You got to be ready for this." And she came in, she stepped up, and she hit those shots. And we practice those shots every day, but to actually make it in crunch time it's more difficult than you would think. So I was really proud of her for kind of having that poise to step up to the line and make them when we needed it.
Yeah, I thought it was an example of how Coach Jack always talks about this year. You have a go-to team, not just a go-to player. And I know everyone is making comparisons to the team you were on your freshman season when you guys made it to the NCAA tournament and you had De'Asia Fair on that team. And she was very clearly the go-to player at the end of games. How would you compare this year's team maybe to the team that you had when you were a freshman 2 years ago, and how you're more balanced, you're deeper, and that gives you guys probably it's a little tougher to defend, I guess, when you're in those situations late in game when you know that it's maybe not going to the same player every single time?
Yeah, for sure. I think just how deep we are is really hard to scout for any team. They have to be able to defend 5 players on the court at one time. And I think that makes it really hard to defend, especially in crunch time. I think we're a very unselfish team, so we really do a good job of getting the ball to the hot hand and making the right decisions in crunch time. So I think for any team trying to defend us, it's not like they can just lock down one player and then be comfortable and confident with that. So I think it's a really big part of our success this year is just how deep we go.
All right, a couple more for you, Sophie. I find it so puzzling right now when I look at your stats. You're shooting lights out on the road from 3. You're shooting 48% from three-point range on the road, 24% at home. I don't know if you even know that, but do you have an explanation for why that is, or why you feel like you've been shooting a whole lot better when you guys are playing on the road this year?
Honestly, no. I don't know what it is. I know some people say the dome can be hard to shoot at just because of the depth perception and whatnot, but I really have no explanation for that. But, we definitely know those things and we take it into the game. So I've been trying to kind of get to the ring a little bit more at the Dome and then maybe shoot those outside shots a little bit more on the road. But yeah, I don't really have an explanation for that one.
Well, next two games are on the road, so I guess we should expect you to be shooting a whole lot of threes when you're playing at NC State and at Notre Dame. Before we let you go, how big of an opportunity is this coming up on Sunday against NC State? We talk about the team from 2 years ago. You had them right down to the wire in Reynolds Coliseum, lost in overtime that year, and obviously, if you would go down there and knock off NC State, that would be a big-time win. So what's kind of top of mind with the team as you look towards the next two games and specifically this first game against NC State?
Yeah, I think this is a huge game for us. NC State's a hard place to play. They always have that really loud sold-out. I think kind of that atmosphere is really going to help prepare us for the tournament and play through March. But, I think just getting this win will really give us a lot of confidence to know that we can go up against those higher ranked teams and, come out with a win going into the rest of the season. So yeah, definitely going to come in with a good attitude and we really want to win this game. So, yeah.
Work and congrats again on winning ACC Player of the Week. It's been a fun team to follow throughout the year, and I'm sure you guys are excited for March and what's ahead, and we'll be following along. So we appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Sophie Burrows, who is a junior right now at Syracuse, one of their star forwards, and was named ACC Player of the Week for her tremendous 2 games this past week. We talked a lot about the Clemson game. She was terrific on the road. Of course, she made more threes on the road when they were at Pittsburgh. And then she carried that into the Sunday game. Only attempted 3 threes inside the Dome, was 1 for 3 from the outside, but scored 19 points and pulled down a career-high 16 rebounds. Great to catch up with Sophie Burrows, who is really a big part of the very successful women's basketball team right now. They're 21-5 on the season. They already have 11 ACC wins, and they are sitting in 3rd place in the ACC standings right now after they were picked to finish 13th in the league. So certainly it feels like Coach Jack should be in the running once again for the ACC Coach of the Year. She won it 2 years ago when they exceeded expectations. No one is exceeding expectations in the league right now more than Syracuse. And Clemson actually is one of the bigger surprises in the league as well, and the Orange beat them inside the Dome on Sunday. I would say right now my vote would be for Coach Jack to win ACC Coach of the Year, and that would be pretty remarkable to have 2 ACC Coaches of the Year awards in your first 4 seasons as the head coach back at your alma mater. And I don't think Coach Jack really cares too much about any of that. I don't think the players care too much about the awards, and that's what goes into having a strong team this year. They really are all bought in together on the right message and doing the right things, and it has been a joy to follow that team throughout the year. They'll be on the road Sunday to take on NC State. By the way, for anyone that has been saying kind of, when are they going to get ranked? Why are they not ranked? I don't think right now they should be ranked necessarily, even though their record is incredibly impressive, 21-5. You're sitting very well in the ACC right now with 11 league wins in conference play. They have not beat anyone that is ranked or even on the fringes of being ranked currently. So as it stands right now, it's fair to maybe make the case that they're more like team 30, team 35 in the country. I don't think that it's the end of the world, obviously. If they're not in the polls, I don't think they care too much about that. And if they go and beat NC State on the road, then they probably will be in the ranked conversation more, or maybe have a number next to their name. Then they play Notre Dame on the road after that. And if you get either of those wins coming up, that puts you in a category of having a win over a team that has been ranked throughout the season, or a win over a team on the road that you were pretty sizable underdogs against. They have definitely flipped some games this year to this point to get to 21-5 that they were not necessarily expected to win. But I think of the Utah game in non-conference play. Virginia on the road is their one quad 1 win right now. So to be ranked, you probably need more than just one quad 1 win, typically. And those are two games that stand out. The Stanford game, they may have been slight underdogs in as well before the game, and they've actually proven that they're definitely a better team than Stanford as the season has worn on. But if you don't have a win that's maybe one that you are not supposed to win, then it's hard to catapult into the rankings. And they do have a couple that fall in that category slightly. But if they went on the road and beat NC State, or if they went on the road and beat Notre Dame, that's a different caliber of win probably than what we've seen to this point. The best thing Syracuse has going for them is when they played peer-like schools this year, they have played very well. When they have played bubble teams, which the Orange right now are a 9 seed, so I wouldn't consider them a bubble team. But when they have played bubble teams this year, they've won every game but one. They're 6-1 against hypothetical bubble teams right now. And that one loss came to Virginia Tech at home, and that was by far the worst performance of the season. And right after that Virginia Tech loss at home, they've started this stretch of playing consistently very good in every game from that point on. So I would say they need to probably pick off one of the next two games to get more into the conversation of being ranked. And by the way, Arizona State, I think, has a very similar record right now to Syracuse. They have played a much softer schedule, and Arizona State is considered a bubble team. They started 15-0. Obviously, they're in the power conference ranks, but I think they're 21-6 at last look, and they're right on the bubble currently. So that's an example of sometimes the record can be a little bit misleading. When Syracuse has gone up against ranked teams, they did play very well on the road at UNC, and that was a game that I really thought they were going to win and get that bucket at the end of the game to get a big upset victory. And then if they had won that game, it would be a different story. But outside of that, they've lost by 15 or more points to all of the ranked teams they played. And I don't think that that's an indictment on Syracuse. I talk about this a lot. There's levels to women's college basketball, more so than maybe what we're used to in the men's game. And there's been parity that has grown in women's college basketball. It used to just be one of 3 teams who would win at the start of the year, and there'd be hardly any upsets in March Madness. Now we're seeing with NIL and the transfer portal, there is more parity, which has made the game a lot more fun to follow and watch. And that's part of the reason I think that it is really rising in popularity. But the top 10 in women's college basketball is more ahead of the top 20 than you would see in men's college basketball. So if the Orange are 25, 30, 35, wherever they fall right now, they're still pretty far behind a top 5 or a top 10 team. And the reason why that's noteworthy to bring up is they sit on the 9 line, according to Charlie Cream, and maybe they should be more on the 8 line or the 7 line. I could hear that, and advocating for them being ranked is probably a little bit of a stretch right now, but I think they could be more in the conversation of getting out of playing a UConn in the first weekend of the tournament or getting out of playing a top seed. And we had a good caller, I think it was Mike in Bradenton/Rochester, who called in recently, and he made that point. And that's the critical thing to pay attention to right now is how can Syracuse get away from the 8-9 seed line where they're not huge underdogs in the second round game? We talked a lot with Sophie about that team her freshman year. They were right there against UConn on the road, and they were playing without Elena Rice, one of their most impactful players that season. She was out of that game due to injury. They came back. They were down by a possession with minutes left on the road at UConn, a team that made it to the Final Four that year. UConn was a 3 seed that year. Syracuse was a 6 seed. You can see the Orange pulling off an upset as a 7 over a 2, maybe. Obviously, more likely as a 6 over a 3. You really hardly ever see 8 over 1 upsets because the 1 seeds are beating ranked teams by 15 or 20 points. And UConn is the team that Syracuse seems to always draw in women's college basketball because of the proximity, and they go a little cheap, the NCAA, and they say, we'll just send Syracuse on a bus trip to Connecticut. And it would be really great to see Syracuse avoid that because this year's UConn team has not lost, and I don't know if they're going to lose. They are clearly the best team in the country in my eyes, and there's a couple that stand out. South Carolina's in that group too. Just think South Carolina just beat a Tennessee team that was ranked at the time by 42 points. So that speaks to there's a bigger gap in top 10 to top 20, top 30 in women's college basketball. And that's why it's very important for Syracuse to get out of the 8-9 conversation and maybe into the 7 or 6 seed conversation. That would really help their chances of making a little bit of a run, or at least being right in a game in the second round, or being more competitive in a game in the second round. So all things to think about when it comes to women's basketball. That's going to wrap up our abbreviated show of Drive Time for today. We appreciate Sophie Burrows for coming on. Thanks to all of you in the Q Sports Talk chat as well. I am promising I'm going to put my feet to the fire. We're definitely doing the Top 5 Tuesday tomorrow. I will not kick the can down the road anymore. I'm going to truly rank my top 5 candidates for the Syracuse basketball coaching opening that we think is going to be happening this offseason tomorrow on the show. And it will start with number 1, which I've already spoiled, is Josh Schertz. And we can take more of your phone calls tomorrow if you have thoughts on what your top candidate would be, or why hiring someone inside the family is a terrible idea, or why it's a good idea. We can continue that conversation tomorrow and talk plenty of men's basketball. And who knows, maybe we'll even talk a little football. I don't think I've uttered the words Fran Brown in quite a while. But that is that for our Drive Time show this afternoon. If you're listening on the radio, Syracuse Crunch Hockey, the pregame coverage is coming up right after a quick break here. We thank Kyle for producing once again, and we will talk to you tomorrow and Friday. We'll have full shows 5 to 6 p.m. here on ESPN Radio.